watching closely.
What's the secret, Max?
You just gotta find something you love to do and then do it for the rest of your life.
I don't want to be a product of my environment. I want my environment to be a product of me.
Hello, and welcome to The Establishing Shot, a podcast where we do deep dives into directors and their filmographies. I am your host, Eli Price, and I am doing a solo episode today because it is episode 50. We are celebrating 50 episodes into the podcast. I am really super excited to be out on episode 50. But yeah, I just can't thank you enough for listening, for all my guests and all the people that have listened, giving me motivation to keep going. I am so grateful for your support, just both being willing to come on my show, being willing to download these long form podcasts and listen to me and my guests ramble on and on about these movies. But yeah, I am super excited. We will not be continuing in our currently we're in the middle of a early Spielberg series covering his films of the 70s and 80s. We are not going to be talking about that specifically this week. Taking a little break from that. Yeah, we'll be picking back up with that next week to cover a couple of his kind of anthology films that he directed part of in The Twilight Zone and Amazing Stories. So yeah, we'll be getting to that next week. But this week, I just wanted to take a moment to both celebrate being 50 episodes in, and then I'm gonna go ahead and share. It's halfway through the year, so I'm gonna go ahead and share my favorite films of 2024 so far, and so we'll get into that later in the episode. I did want to encourage you to do a couple things for me that would help the podcast keep going. Maybe eventually make it to 100 episodes. That would be amazing. The first thing is really easy. Anyone and everyone that's listening can do this. Take a moment. You can even pause right here in a second, the podcast, and go do this. Just go to Apple or Spotify or both would be great, and leave a rating and review. I would greatly appreciate it. It helps the visibility of the podcast. It helps new people find the podcast. Yeah, I'd love for you to leave that on Apple. You can leave the rating up to 5 stars, and you can even leave a little review, give a few thoughts of what you like about the podcast, so that people can see that. On Spotify, if you don't regularly listen on Spotify, you do have to kind of subscribe and then scrub through an episode before it'll let you leave a rating. But it only takes a second, and I would greatly appreciate it. Again, it just helps the visibility of the podcast, and it just helps more people find it. And I want to share this love for film and these discussions of films with more and more people. So please do that. Go leave a rating and review on Apple and Spotify. And if you're on those are the two main ones. If you're on a platform that's not those that lets you leave ratings and reviews, feel free. I would love for you to do that there too. But yeah, I would so greatly appreciate it. Another thing you can do for the podcast is you can join the Establishing Shot family. If you want to give financially to the podcast, be a supporter in that way, I would greatly appreciate that. You know, it does cost to do this. It costs for the studio to be able to record in, to keep the website going, to buy my research materials, get the Blu-ray discs so that I can watch the movies in good quality and get all the special features. So yeah, keeping upkeeping any equipment, it does cost to keep this thing going. Um, and I'm doing all of this myself. It's completely independent. So I'm hosting and producing and researching, and so yeah, anything that you give would be great. I think I have tiers starting at $5 a month, so not much, just like a latte a month. I don't know, maybe with inflation, it's like a latte plus a little bit, but a little less than a latte, I guess. I mean, but yeah, it's not much. I think I have tiers at $5, $10, and $15. And not only do you support the podcast and help me to keep this thing going, but I also have things for you. If you support the podcast, I do have a little Discord server where you can we can chat about movies. I'd love to get to know you, my listener and supporter, more there. Um, and yeah, there's a lot of things we can do on there as far as just chatting about movies and maybe jumping on voice calls periodically. But yeah, so I would love for you to do that. Yeah, I even usually let people that support the podcast choose a movie that I review in a bonus episode of some sort. So, and I am hoping to at some point get some uh, current film reviews going for family members, for people that support the podcast. Short form reviews going in those special supporter feeds. So yeah, that's something that if that's a little incentive, if more people are supporting, it'll give me more incentive to do those for the supporters. So, yeah, I'll try to find the time to do that. If I get some more supporters, that would be great. But yeah, so yeah, leave a rating review, Apple and Spotify. You can go to establishingshotpod.com and click donate in the menu to find out more about how to become a family member and support the podcast financially. And all of this will be in the show notes in the episode description. So you can just click the links there. That is out of the way. And so it's the 50th episode. It's incredible. I'm so excited to be 50 episodes in. I've actually already recorded uh, through 57, I think. Just really, really incredible. I have, according to my analytics on uh, Spotify for podcasters, I think I have over 1,600 plays. As of, I've released 48 episodes at the time of the recording. So I'm sure I'll hit 1,700 by the time this comes out. And I'm just so, so thankful. Um, I can't believe that many people, have listened to my shows, and I feel like I'm getting them more refined. I hope that people have been enjoying the split between the main episodes discussing the films in this series, and also the kind of bonus episodes with either movie drafts or interviews. I've really been enjoying. I've always loved the movie drafts. That's been a part of the podcast from the beginning. They're just so fun to do and to listen to and to vote on. But I've also been enjoying doing a few interviews here and there with people. Um, that work in film, whether it's in criticism or acting or screenwriting or whatever. I've really been enjoying doing those too. So I hope the listeners enjoy those episodes as well. I would love to hear your feedback on that. Do you like having those episodes release in the weeks in between the main episodes? Are you enjoying those? Would you just rather me release bi-weekly and smush it all together? If you have feedback about that, feel free. You can always email me at establishingshotpod@gmail.com for any feedback, or you can even leave a voicemail on the website. Um, but yeah, I have just really loved doing this. I have 3 thoughts that I want to share from being 50 episodes in. So here goes nothing. Thought number one, like I said, I never imagined I'd make it this far, or I, I when I started this, I was like, I'm gonna do this. If it gets to be too much, I can always just stop. I don't have anything, there. It's whatever I want to invest into this is what it's going to be. And so I don't know. I didn't think this far into the future. I'm over a year into making these and putting them out, 50 episodes in. I don't know. I never thought about going this far. And so, and not only that, but I've got to connect with new people, reconnect with old friends or acquaintances. I've got to talk with some really, really cool and incredible guests on the show. That I, when I started off, I was just kind of like roping my friends in, and that my friends still pop on the podcast. I love recording episodes with them, but I just never really thought, oh, I'm going to be getting people in from all over, um, the nation, and people that actually work in the industry in some way, uh, to be guests to discuss these films. And so it's just been really, really cool, um, to do this and to connect with people and talk about movies with people. Those connections are just invaluable. And I guess my main thought out of this is just, if you want to do something, just do it. That's kind of where I was. I was at a point in my life where I was like, I've wanted to do this for a long time. I think now is the time to finally take that step. And I announced it, and once you announce it, it's like, okay, I've got to do something now. And so, if you have a drive to do something, to make something, to start something, to create something, just do it. The biggest regret you'll have is just, well, I tried and it didn't work for me, or I couldn't keep it going. And so what? You tried something, you did something, or you could find yourself 50 episodes into a small little podcast. Uh, so yeah, that's thought number one. You just embrace the journey of creating something new, that you're passionate about. You'll never know where it's going to lead you, what connections it's going to give you. And so, yeah, just make it, just do it, just create it, just take that, whatever the next step is for that. Go ahead and take it. My second thought number two, um, is just more specific to my content. This has just made me fall so much more in love with the art form that is film, that is movies, and so I just I don't know, the sights and sounds, the textures, and it all just like reaches into the depths of who we are. Sometimes it's shallow and just pure fun, and sometimes it teaches us how to find who we are, how to discover something about ourselves. Sometimes it shows us how someone else may feel. It builds our empathy. It teaches us about an experience that we may not be familiar with. And not only that, it uses everything. It's sound, it's motion, it's action, it's music. I've even seen films, uh, more recently, that you can feel, there's like texture to it, which is strange, but it's just such a rich art form. And I've just fallen in love with it. And I think it's just because this has driven me to, once you take a step into, like I said, and take that first step into creating something, into putting something out into the world, you want to do the best you can. You want to put your best foot forward, put the best product, I guess you could say, out there. And because of that, I've watched so many more films. I've watched a variety of films. I've done a lot more reading and digging into and listening to other people, talk about films on other podcasts or books or YouTube channels or whatever. And it just makes you fall more in love with something that you already loved. And it's just been really cool to discover that and to dig into that. And yeah, I would encourage you to do the same, to find new ways to enjoy the things you enjoy, to uh, enrich your experience of those things that you're passionate about, because the well could be really deep for these things, and that's what I found with film, is just the well is so deep. It's a fairly young art form. It's just slightly over 100 years old, but uh, I don't know. It's such a rich, incredible form of art, and that leads me to my third thought. Thought number three, and that is in particular my director series format. The way that if this is happens to be your first episode, I dig into films by going through the filmographies of directors. And so, I kind of have some resource books back behind me to show the first three series that I've done. I've done a series on Wes Anderson. I've done the series on Christopher Nolan, and which, by the way, I'll be doing an Oppenheimer episode because I still have yet to cover that. I'll be doing that later in the year, but after the early Spielberg series ends. And yeah, I'm in the middle of getting closer to the end of an early Spielberg series. And so, yeah, it really, really is a really cool format. It's something that, like I've said before on the podcast, I was watching through movies in this way before I ever thought about doing a podcast. And then when I did think about doing a podcast, this was a way that I thought would be really fun to do it. And it really has been. But yeah, so, this way of the format of the way I do this podcast, these director series, has taught me that the vision of a film is a bit paradoxical. Um, you know, and I guess I should explain that. Obviously, um, it's paradoxical in the sense that the vision of a film is often largely singular, but also at the same time extremely communal and not singular at all. It's really, really, yeah. So in that way, it's paradoxical. It's a singular vision of a filmmaker, but also a very communal vision. Um, and here's what I can break that down for everyone. It's often there are one, two, three people that really, really drive the vision of a film. Oftentimes, it's the director, or the director and the writers, or maybe even sometimes the producer or the cinematographer has a strong influence on the vision of the film. And by vision, I guess I should say, what I mean by the vision of the film is kind of the direction of the film. What is the film trying to do? What is it trying to look like? What is it trying to convey? What is the what's the goal, I guess? And that doesn't mean like by that I don't mean that a director always is like, oh, here's the theme I want to display. Like, oftentimes filmmakers don't think in that way. It's more just about what is it trying to do. So in the Temple of Doom episode, for example, Elijah Davidson said, or actually not in the Temple of Doom, in the interview that came out last week with Elijah Davidson, he said when he's thinking about a film, he's thinking, what is it about? Not in the sense of like, what is it trying to tell me, but what is it up to? You know, what is it um, what's it about? What's it around? What is it up to? What are the things that are happening that raise questions um, that connect with you, that are interesting or strange, or are a decision? Why did they make that decision? What is a movie up to? So that's what I kind of mean when I talk about vision. So, the singular part of that would be the director or the writer, or sometimes a smaller group of people. I guess you could say that's communal, but I'm still thinking of that in a more singular way. Just a couple of people trying to drive the vision of a film. Um, and in that way, it is a very largely singular vision. Um, and you can really see that in the directors I've covered so far: Wes Anderson, Christopher Nolan, Steven Spielberg. They, as directors, are all over their films. Their sentiment, their sentiments, um, their philosophies, their um, ways of seeing the world, their ways of manipulating the art form to explore how they see the world. It's just kind of the themes that are implanted in their movies, that run through their filmographies. And so you can see Wes Anderson all over his films. You see a Wes Anderson film, you're like, this is a Wes Anderson film. You can see you know the strong philosophizing thoughts that are ingrained in Christopher Nolan's brain that he can't get out all through his movies. You can see the themes of broken families all throughout Steven Spielberg films in different ways through different lenses. And so, those are just kind of some little small examples, but they are all over their films. There is a singular vision when they're making these films. But at the same time, there are so many people that put their creative effort into making a film, into putting it together, into making it happen, that it can't simply be a singular vision. It's also communal in very many ways. You have actors, you have sound guys, you have uh, art directors and production designers, you have composers, you have special effects and visual effects artists, you have stunt coordinators and stunt men and women. You have costumes and makeup. You have lighting. Um, there are so many things that go into making a movie. Uh, along with the writers and producers and directors. Um, it, there's so many people that get together to make a film happen. And you can have a film that's made by a few people, I'm sure, but when we're talking about film in general, it's most films, it takes a lot of people, editors. Uh, you know, we've talked a lot about editing in this podcast, but oh man, it's such a big group of people, and the result you get is it it makes sense unless it's a bad movie, which those exist out there, but it makes sense. It's a vision, it's an experience that is singular, it's full, it's whole, um, it's intelligible, it means something, it does something to you as the viewer, and it's made by all of these vast group of creative minds that are coming together to make it happen. Um, and so, yeah, you have the singular vision of the director, writer, producer, that sort of thing that is kind of driving it. But also, there are so many influences on, how this visual effects artist works, how this cinematographer works, what this actor brings to the character, um, the way that something that the editor can see in post that kind of changes the movie a little bit, but makes it better. There are so many elements that make filmmaking a communal effort, just as in a communal vision, just as much as it is a singular effort and a singular vision. Um, and in all of this, I've just really this is just my opinion, but I just think that film is just the apex of art. It the multifaceted use of our senses, um, and the communal nature of making it happen, is just humanity at its finest. It's uniquely and just fully a human effort to put a film out there and to make it and to get it out there. And then it's also an art form that's experienced communally. Whether it's watching it on the couch with other people or going to a theater and watching it in a theater. There's you have concerts with music and stuff like that, but I think when people think of music, they don't necessarily go straight to concerts, but when people think of film, they go straight to a theater. That's where your thought probably goes, and so even the experience of the art is communal, and I just think that, eh, you know, this art form that is just slightly over 100 years old is just the apex of human art. It uses all of our senses in different ways. Maybe not taste or touch as much, but sometimes movies can bring those things, and smell, it can bring those things, just by the way that the visuals and the sound can affect you, in your mind as you're watching. And like I said, that communal effort, I think, is a big part of this, because there's so many people coming together to make it happen. Um, it's just it's such a human that's such a big part of what it means to be human. And so, yeah, it's just such a human art form, and I just love it. And these are some things that just a few thoughts that I've had, um, with reaching 50 episodes. Again, thank you so much for listening. Thank you to all my guests so far, and all the guests that are to come, for being a part of this show with me. I just can't thank you all enough, and I can't. I don't know. I'm excited and proud, and just honored to be doing this and to be 50 episodes in. But here's to 50 episodes more. I am going to shift gears now, and I want to talk about some 2024 films. I'm not going to go terribly long. I'll kind of I will say I've watched 20 films, that are 2024 US releases. Some of these in here, if you go on Letterboxd or IMDb, it might say 2023. Um, and that's just because of the nature of how films are dated and whatnot. But it I usually go by films that were released in the US, like in a limited release or a wide release in that year. So sometimes a film will have a festival run the year before, but actually released the next year. Sometimes it'll get like a release maybe just in New York or just in LA, or maybe in LA and New York at the very end of the year so that it can make an Oscar run, but it wasn't actually like it didn't actually get like a limited release or a wide release, until the next year. And so I usually count those films for the next year in my rankings, not for the year that they may be listed under. So that's just a quick explanation. If you hear a movie and you're like, I thought that was last year, it's like, well, yeah, technically that's what it'll say, but it actually didn't get a US release until this year. And so, that's just a quick thing at the beginning. I'm not going to go through all 20 films I've seen so far. Usually I'll end up seeing, I would say, at least the past like 5 years or so, since I've been really like into film, I'll end up seeing, um, probably anywhere from, usually it's around 60. films that I see year to year. So I'm really like only a third. We're halfway through the year, and I'm only a third to the amount of movies I usually end up seeing from a given year. But that's because my watching of movies in a particular year really ramps up at the end of the year. And on top of that, it's been a slow year so far. I don't know if anyone else has felt that, but I felt like by this time last year, I had a handful of movies that I really, really liked. And I guess that's sort of the case this year, but it doesn't feel the same. I think the um, the strikes had a lot to do with that. This year, getting these weird releases, and I I don't know. I think maybe it's just gonna be a duller year. Maybe not as many great movies this year. Is That's what it feels like so far, anyway. Uh, because I don't know. It just feels like there's a lot of movies that I just so far that I don't know. I'm like, I could watch that, but do I really want to? Couldn't I just watch an older movie that I haven't seen that I know is probably really good? And so that's kind of how I've been so far. I did do a lot of watches here recently, trying to catch up with stuff. And so yeah, I don't know. Maybe it'll ramp up in the second half of the year, and there'll be a lot of great movies. I hope so. And then if not, maybe 2025 will just be a phenomenal year, and that would be great. I would love that. Yeah. So here's what I'll do. I was going to do my top uh, 10. I was going to run through my top like 10 down to 6 really quickly, and then maybe spend a little bit more time on my top 5. Not a ton of time, but maybe a little bit more. But I also really want to shout out my number 11 as well. So I will start off there because it is one that I was hoping was going to be in my top 10, but I watched enough that it got knocked out. And so, um, yeah, at my number uh, 11 is Late Night with the Devil. Um, it is directed by brothers Cairns and Colin Cairns. They are, I think I'm pronouncing that right, Cairnes. They're brothers. Late Night with the Devil is it did get a theatrical release. I didn't get to see it in theaters, but it is on Shutter, so you can get a subscription to Shutter or a free trial and watch this. I just really like it. It's starring David Dasmalchian, who he's been in some Nolan films. He he was definitely in some of the Dark Knight trilogy for sure. Made some appearances there, but this is a film. It's kind of like posing as a found footage film. It doesn't it kind of breaks some of the rules there, where it doesn't really feel like a found footage film. But it's this guy that Dasmalchian plays. His name is Jack Delroy. He is a rising late night talk show host, star in the 70s, and uh, he's kind of in a rut, and he's looking to do something on his show to get his ratings back up. And he does this kind of like Halloween horror kind of show where he brings on these various people that maybe are mediums, or maybe a girl that's possessed, and just kind of everything gets weird. Obviously, it's a horror movie, so things go wrong. But I don't know. I just thought this movie was really inventive and fun. It's not the best horror movie ever, um, and a lot of people didn't care for the way it ended. I thought it was fine, but yeah, I just had a lot of fun with it. It does some interesting things. It's different. It's a new idea, and I just love that. And yeah, it make my skin crawl at certain points, which is kind of what you want with a horror movie. So there you go. But yeah, that was my sneaking in the 11 so I could shout that movie out. At number 10, I have Alex Garland's Civil War. Alex Garland is a writer and director that I really, really love. Um, his movies, Annihilation and Ex Machina, are just incredible. I love those movies. Uh, yeah, they're like peak sci-fi. They're just phenomenal. Civil War is kind of a mixed bag. I'm positive on it. I think it looks incredible. I think he's doing some interesting things. I think the the acting is really great. The characters are kind of, I don't know. I'm kind of mixed on my feelings about the characters. Um, I think the problem is it's kind of, this movie is sold on the political nature of the movie, but it's, I don't know, at the end of the day, that's kind of, those elements are kind of the least interesting things about the movie. What's more interesting is these characters and what they're gonna do, um, and the kind of like political messages are kind of weak, or like, okay, like, is the point of this movie don't have a civil war? Because I think everyone kind of knows that deep down, that it wouldn't be good. We don't need this movie to show us how much war sucks. We kind of already know that. Uh, but I don't know. It is a good movie. I am positive on it. I think my thoughts are more just because I have high hopes for Alex Garland, and this just isn't like peak Alex Garland. I did like it more than Men, his last movie. But yeah, Alex Garland movies are always going to look really good. The performances you get from Kirsten Dunst and Kaylee Spaney are really good um, as well. So yeah, it's definitely worth a watch. I went and saw it in theaters and was glad I got to do that. So yeah, so at number 9, I have The Fall Guy, the David Leitch movie starring Ryan Gosling and Emily Blunt. Um, and yeah, it is exactly what you think it is. It's got a lot of action and stunts, and it's got a bit of a rom-com element to it. It's a lot of fun. There's a lot of things that explode, a lot of cool action, some really like fun and inventive rom-com stuff. Being on a movie set, and so yeah, I just thought this was really fun. I went and saw it without my wife, which I regret. I wasn't sure if she would like it or not, but after watching it, I was like, man, I should have saw this with my wife. And so whenever it comes to start streaming or whatever, I'll probably watch it with her too. But yeah, just, I don't really have a lot to say about it. It was just really a lot of fun. There's some plot stuff that's just kind of like meh. But yeah, it's like, I always like to say there's nothing wrong with just a really fun 3.5-star movie that's not really trying to say a whole lot. It's just really fun. I love those kinds of movies. Actually, his last movie, Bullet Train, was like that for me with Brad Pitt and some other great actors there. It's just kind of a fun movie. It's not necessarily trying to say anything or be profound. It's just kind of fun. Um, so yeah, The Fall Guy is at number 9. At number 8, I have Richard Linklater's Hitman, that released on Netflix. And here in this month of June, it is a Richard Linklater film of School of Rock and Boyhood and the Before trilogy and Days Confused fame. Really, I've watched several uh, Linklater films in the past like couple months and also in the past year. He's becoming a director that I really think is really great. Hitman is good. It's another one of those like 3.5 just kind of fun movies. I think it's trying to say a little bit more than the David Leitch movie and Fall Guy. Richard Linklater is a bit of a thinker, so his movies are usually trying to do a little bit more than a movie like a David Leitch movie. But he wrote this with Glenn Powell, who stars in it. Powell's kind of an up and coming star. Um, yeah, and I think it's really fun. I, it didn't reach the heights that some of his movies do for me. I don't know if it was it's maybe the plotting or it's and it's similar to his movie Bernie with Jack Black in that it's kind of like based on a uh like an article about a real person from a Texas paper or something like that. And so, it's kind of in that vein. It's a bit ridiculous, um, but also like written in a way where it's like really doing some philosophizing and thinking. And so I don't know, this might be a movie that I might would watch again and like it even more. It kind of has that feel. Might pick up on some different things, but yeah, I do think that Powell is joined by Adria Arjona, um, and they have some good chemistry. You have some good comedy. I think some of the comedy is just kind of like more sitcom-y, and maybe that kind of didn't work for me a ton. Um, I thought it was like made me chuckle, but it's not really what I was looking for in this movie. But yeah, it is. He's Glenn Powell's character Gary is posing as a hitman to kind of catch people in the act of hiring a hitman. He ends up falling in love with one of the girls that he goes to meet to pose as a hitman with, and kind of, I guess you could say, hijinks ensue or drama ensues or whatnot. It gets a bit of like neo noir at the end, which is kind of fun. But yeah, plot wise, I think it's um not not the most like, I don't know, well thought out or whatever. I don't know that it's trying to be that. It's just, I think it's just a solid 3.5 movie for me. It's like, yeah, I enjoyed that. That was fun. So that's a Hitman. It's on Netflix. At number 7, I have a movie that um, may not be on as many people's radar. It's called "Do Not Expect Too Much from the End of the World" by Radu Jude. It is a Romanian film, so it is in let me see. The primary language is Romanian. There is a little bit of English in it, not a ton, but yeah, the primary language of Romanian, and it is starring Belinka Manalache. So I probably pronounced that wrong, and I'm very sorry. Uh, if you would like to voicemail in and tell me the correct pronunciation, I would appreciate it actually. But yeah, it is currently streaming on Mubi, MUBI. If you've never heard of that service, it's a pretty good one. I would recommend it if you're looking for a new streaming service. They kind of curate the films that are on there. They have some different stuff that you can watch there. But yeah, do not expect too much of the from the end of the world. Is it's super interesting. It's long. It's not quite 3 hours, but it's like 2 hours and 45 minutes. I want to say a bit of a slow burn film, a bit of kind of a slice of life in a way. I think it's a very modern film, um, in the way that it is using a lot of different filmmaking formats. Um, the main story is in black and white, and then you kind of have these flashbacks to another character, and I'm not even sure, it might even be like clips from another Romanian movie that they're using for that. And those are in color, and at times it kind of like slows down to this jumpy pace or even like stops still frame. The main character, her name is Angela. She does this like character on TikTok where it's like um, a filter that gives her like a bald head and a goatee, and she's like really vulgar and like kind of, it's like a satire of like macho dude kind of thing. Um, even like macho dude bigot kind of thing, satire that she does. But she's working for a little Romanian production crew, I guess, that kind of does consulting work for people to make little films of various sorts. She is going around the town, going around, I guess it's Bucharest, uh, kind of meeting people that have been injured from this company. They're trying to make a promo video for the company to encourage workers to wear their helmets. And they're kind of, it's a very like, I guess you would say, view into the exploitative nature of corporatism in a way. But yeah, I was kind of in the middle of this movie. It does all kinds of things, and so it unfortunately, with the way my mind works, my head is jumping all over the place too as I'm thinking about it. But yeah, she does these TikToks, so you get some clips of her little TikTok. Um, Main stuff is in black and white. You get this really interesting, like 5 minutes of these kind of still image film pictures of a certain thing that I don't really want to give away in the middle of the movie. The way it ends is really incredible. It is the kind of the culmination of the film, and it's a still frame. The camera doesn't move. People kind of move in and out of the frame. The main people are kind of like center frame the whole time. This will make sense if you watch the movie. It's doing a lot of stuff, and I just really love the swing of this movie. I think it looks really incredible. Um, if you can do slow burn cinema, then I would recommend it. If you can take jumping around into different formats, then I would recommend it. I think it's really inventive and interesting. So that's Do Not Expect Too Much from the End of the World. Again, you can stream that on Mubi right now. So go do that. And then at number 6, I have Furiosa, a Mad Max saga. I thought this was going to end up at number 5, but I finally moved another film in front of it, which I'll get to in a second. This is starring Anya Taylor-Joy and Chris Hemsworth as our two main characters of Furiosa and Dementus. This movie, I think, would be higher for me if it wasn't inevitable to compare it to Mad Max Fury Road. When you make a prequel to a movie, it's inevitable that that's going to happen. And just the pace and incredible nature of Mad Max Fury Road makes anything you're trying to compare to it kind of pale in comparison. This does have some sequences that are on par, but again, they're just sequences that are on par. This is a slower movie. It's longer. It's 149 minutes. So that's 2.5 hours basically. And it's in chapters. It's got 5 chapters with title cards. It has slower parts of the movie where there's not as much going on. There's a lot more talking. The Dementus character that Chris Hemsworth plays does these like Shakespearean almost monologues. Yeah, it's essentially a revenge movie at its heart. And I don't know, I think it's inevitable that it's going to be compared to Mad Max Fury Road. I can't help it. And because of that, it just like feels like it's not living quite up to that. I still have this as a 4-star movie. It's really good. The action stuff is incredible. I really like the Dementus character. He's really an interesting part of this kind of franchise. In that he might talk more than any other character talks in any other Mad Max movie all put together. He says a lot of stuff. And so, yeah, I did really, really enjoy this. I got to see it in, we have a GPX theater. It's basically like poor man's IMAX, here at our theater. And, got to see it in that, elevated format. So that was fun. The sound is better and the screen is a little bigger. So, um, That was fun. It still is in theaters as of the time of this recording, and so if you can still go see it, I would recommend it. It's really, really good. Um, I think Anya Taylor-Joy is great. I think Chris Hemsworth is great. You have some other characters that are really fun. And yeah, it's different. It's if you can go in and kind of separate yourself from Mad Max Fury Road, props to you. There are some prequely things that it has to do, kind of because you know that this character is going to do this. It's kind of like, okay, yeah, I get it. But yeah, that's my number 6. I said I was going to spend less time on those, more time on these top 5. That's probably not the case. I'm probably just gonna keep rolling through at the same pace. But yeah, at number 5, this is a movie that's kind of growing on me the more I think of it. It's one of those, when after I watched it, I was like, "That was really good," and now I'm starting to think, "Is it great? Is it even better than I thought it was? Do I need to watch this film again?" It's one of those kind of movies. And this is a movie that has the 2023 label, but didn't release until this year in the US. And that is La Chimera by Alice Rohrwacher. Um, and if you're looking for Alice, it's Alice. That's what I thought it was until I listened to some interviews and heard it pronounced correctly. It's Alice, Alice. I would have said Alice, but I did not. I said it correctly. Alice Rohrwacher is the director. She's done some other movies that I have not seen. Um, and now I want to, because this was a really, really interesting film. The lead character is played by Josh O'Connor, who might come up again later in this rankings list. Josh O'Connor as the character Arthur, Carol Duarte as Italia, and you even have Isabella Rossellini show up as a kind of grumpy older lady character. That's really, really, really fun. But basically, this movie follows this band of Tomb Raiders, sort of. The um, Etruscans, the Etruscan tombs in Italy, in this area of Italy, which are pre-Roman people that really spent a long time on their tombs and putting special things in those tombs to be buried with, and art and all that. So there's like really valuable stuff in these. He's basically this Arthur character that's played by Josh O'Connor and his little band of grave robbers. Um, that's how they make their money. It's not legal, so there's a bit of danger. In fact, the movie opens with the Arthur character being released from prison. He's done some time, and all that said, this movie is very slow. The Arthur character is very reserved and internal, and it's I listened to some interviews on just a shout out. I listened to some interviews that Next Best Picture podcast did with Alice and Josh O'Connor and Isabella Rossellini, and this film it kind of exists in this weird in between of like the real world and kind of the otherworldly, or maybe yeah, I think it was either Rossellini or Rohrwacher described it as the beyond, kind of like maybe the next life. Um, and it kind of exists in this dreamlike state that you kind of get from the Arthur character's perspective. He is a character that kind of lives in the in between. He's not really fully in this world or fully in that world, but somewhere in between. And because of that, he's very reserved. He's very like internal. Um, he's kind of unpredictable in a way, but not in like a wild way. Just kind of like you're not really sure what to do with him, and that kind of keeps you interested, I guess, the whole time. You're not really sure what he might do next, and yeah, the camera work is really interesting. They use some different film stocks and aspect ratios to convey different kind of time periods or modes of thought. The camera does these flips to where like the frame is upside down and it'll flip back to right side up, and it's really interesting editing um, to convey what the movie's trying to do. And yeah, it's really kind of hard to explain this movie other than it's just kind of ethereal nature. And he's, he's trying to connect with this lost love that died as well. And I don't know, it's really hard to describe. You just kind of have to go watch it. And so, yeah, I would do that. It is available to rent. That's what I did. You can rent it on Amazon or any of the renting formats, really. But that's La Quimera by Alice Rohrwacher. So yeah, look that one up. That was my number 5. My number 4, oh man, oh man, my number 4, Hundreds of Beavers by Mike Cheslick, starring Ryland Brixton Cole Twos, who also co-wrote it with Cheslick. What to say about this movie? Let me read the letterbox description. It says, in the 19th century, a drunken Applejack salesman must go from zero to hero and become North America's greatest fur trapper by defeating hundreds of beavers. And this movie is basically a silent movie. It's a black and white movie. There's only like maybe 3 lines of dialogue, and I don't even know if you could call it lines of dialogue. You could just as easily put a title card up to say it, just like a silent movie. But yeah, so a silent movie, it's live action, it's black and white, and it's basically Looney Tunes. But like the best of Looney Tunes. It's really funny. Lots of great gags. I mean, just I was laughing all throughout this movie. I don't know that I've ever seen any movie like this. And I just love that. When you see a movie and you're like, I'm not sure I've ever seen a movie like this before. You gotta love it. It's just hilarious. You've got just a bunch of people in mascot costume, beavers and bunnies and dogs and wolves, raccoons. It's just really funny, really fun, really inventive, done on a really low budget. I listened to some interviews. They filmed this over 2 winters in Wisconsin, I think. So they were like actually in the snow. They had to figure out how to keep the people in mascots' feet warm. Um, it just really, really incredible. You have them like climbing up trees, but they're just like moving their legs. You can tell it's totally done like in post. Um, and there's just a ton of great gags that are just hilarious. And so I highly recommend this. I think you can get a free trial of Vandor maybe through Amazon and watch it that way. Or I think it's like discounted to rent on Amazon at like $2.99 to rent it. So yeah, I just rented it. And highly recommend this. I thought about putting this over my number 3 and didn't, but I really wanted to, but I didn't. Um, and yeah, it's oh man, I might if I watch this again, it might bump up from a 4-star to 4.5. I just it's just so good. But yeah, so the movie that I could not put it over at number 3 was Dune Part 2. Denis Villeneuve's sequel to his Dune movie. And apparently the second of 3 that he's planning on doing, the next one being Dune Messiah. Obviously starring Timothée Chalamet and Zendaya, Rebecca Ferguson, Javier Bardem, Josh Brolin, Austin Butler, Florence Pugh, Dave Bautista, Christopher Walken, Léa Seydoux, Stellan Skarsgård, Charlotte Rampling. I mean, so huge cast of incredible actors. This movie, my big problem with this movie, the reason that I have this movie as a 4-star movie and not a 4.5 or 5-star like many people did, is there's just too much yada yada yadaing for me. Um, I don't like the way they yada yadaed through plot points, through character building, and just expected you to go along with it. Um, I feel like they skip over some things that they could have spent some more time in. Um, I know it's a long movie already, but man, if you're gonna make a long movie, then like spend some time building the characters a little bit better, in my opinion. Don't yada yada over plot points that seem like they would be great opportunities for you to really see how this character is getting from this to this. And so I don't want to go into it and spoil anything, but um, yeah, I don't know. That was my big problem with this movie, but the acting is great. It's incredible. And just really like on a cinematic level, it's a masterpiece. The visuals, the sound, the production design, the effects, I mean, top level, like incredible. There's the scene where he's riding on the Shai Hulud, the big worm. Um, and I saw this again in a GPX theater. It's like I said, a poor man's IMAX, and just one of the coolest things I've ever seen in a movie theater. It was loud. It was, people use the word visceral a lot, but it was visceral. It was, it was just really, really incredible to watch and experience. And so because of that, I still have it up here at number 3. I I might by the end of the year move Hundreds of Beavers ahead of it, but for now, I can't get over that, that theater experience of how incredible it was to watch on the big screen. Um, yeah, I wish they would have spent some more time actually like showing you how characters get from this to this, how they get from in love to not in love, how a character might get from uh not wanting to do something to wanting to do something. If you've seen it, you know kind of probably what I'm talking about. But yeah, I could have done with some more of that. But all in all, still a really, really good film. Really, really incredible. It's currently at my number 3. I don't know where this will be at the end of the year. I don't know if it'll still be in the top 10. I don't know. It's hard to say. But right now it's at number 3. This will be my first 4.5-star movie. I have at number 2. It is a movie that I was surprised I loved as much as I did. Did not expect to. And that is Luca Guadagnino's Challengers, starring Zendaya rather, Mike Feist, and Josh O'Connor. So we're getting Josh O'Connor 2 in the top 5 so far. Wow, great, great job, Josh. That's such a high accolade, getting 2 movies in my humble little podcast top 5 of the year so far. But yeah, Challengers by Luca Guadagnino. Follows, and it kind of is Zendaya's character's movie in a lot of ways. Tashi, who is a young tennis star who, it's not really a spoiler, but she gets injured early on and has to become a coach instead of a player. And then you have these 2 friends from childhood, Art and Patrick, played by Mike Weiss and Josh O'Connor, respectively, who are best friends, but kind of end up in this kind of love triangle with Zendaya. They both are interested in her. One has a one has a relationship with her, and then the other marries her, and then um but then the movie, like, it's cutting back and forth between all these different time periods in their lives, and it all centers around and then eventually culminates in this challengers level match, which this is a lot of it's a sports movie in a lot of ways, um and in a lot of the framing and the the drama of it all. um and it's centered around tennis. I don't know a ton about tennis. I've learned a little bit listening to stuff about this movie on other podcasts, but it's a challenge centered around this challengers match that helps you qualify for the U.S. Open, basically. And Art is a successful winner champion. Patrick, the one who did not end up marrying Zendaya's Tashi, is kind of down on his luck, not as consistently successful kind of guy, and they are in a feud. This movie, I thought it was going to be a lot more raunchy than it was. It really wasn't all that raunchy. Like, you have some kind of like definitely some uh sexy scenes going on, but it's not really like that's not as interested in that as like the dynamics of this relationship and the how it is tennis. Early on, the Tashi character says, to the Patrick character, you don't understand tennis. Tennis is a relationship. It's when I'm like playing someone else, we know about each other and we know things about each other and we are in tune with what the other person is doing, and it's this relationship. And so that plays out in the movie. Um, it's the drama of it all, and the characters are incredible. Um, Josh O'Connor is playing a very different character than he does in La Quimera, where he is reserved and hard to read. There, he is charismatic and charming. I mean, he's just like complete opposite here. So that shows his acting chops. Mike Feist is also really good. He's doing something a little bit more subtle with his character of Art. Zendaya, of course, is really good as Tashi, very controlling and in control of the every scene she's in, really. Um, but yeah, so it's an incredible movie. It's also doing a lot of really interesting stuff visually. You get some slow-mo sweatiness going on at certain points. That's really fun. You get some interesting perspective shots of like the perspective of the racket, or even at one point the perspective of the ball. So those were really interesting and fun to experience. The sound is really incredible. You've got uh, a score by Trent Reznor and Atticus Ross that is incredible. It's this like pulsing electronic uh dance, like house music score will pump in at certain points in the movie, and you're just like, yes. um I I just loved the energy of this movie. I loved the drama of it all was enticing and had me interested in what was going to happen, where it was going to end up. I thought where it ended up was really incredible and interesting, and it doesn't like answer all the questions, which I don't think it should. So I highly recommend this. I did not think I was going to like this as much as I did. I thought it was incredible. So those Challengers by Luca Guadagnino. You can rent it at home VOD for like 19.99 currently. I don't know when it'll be rentable for cheaper or streaming. And I think it's probably still playing in some theaters. But yeah, that's Challengers. My number one. This is another movie that you'll see has 2023 on it because it had a New York release at the end of last year, but I don't really count that. It actually had a limited and wider release this year in the US, and that is Wim Wenders' Perfect Days. Uh, Wim Wenders is a German director. This is a Japanese language film set in Japan. Yeah, crazy, I know, but Wim Wenders has always loved Japan. And so he co-wrote this movie with where's the name? Takasaki. So he had a Japanese writer co-write it with him, uh, and it is starring Koji Yakusho, who I don't believe I've seen in anything else. But he was incredible. I thought his character doesn't say a whole lot, so he has to convey a lot with his facial expressions, and I thought he did an incredible job. It's kind of a slice of life film. It follows this character, Hirayama, played by Yakusho, who is a janitor, basically. He's a toilet cleaner in Tokyo. He goes around every day, and every one of his days is he has a routine. So you kind of get into the rhythm of his routine with him. He wakes up to the sound of the street sweeper sweeping the sidewalks. He does his morning routine. He goes out. He looks at the sun and smiles at it. Gets his drink. Gets in his van. Goes and starts his shift cleaning toilets. He has a process and his tools that he uses to clean the toilets. These public toilets are really all interesting. Apparently, there was this um, thing in Japan where they had all these famous architects each build a public toilet area in different parts of the city at one point in time, and so they all look really different and all kind of have that artistic touch to them. So that's really cool to just see. It's like seeing Tokyo through the toilet architecture, which is public toilet architecture, which is really actually kind of interesting. Um, but yeah, it's really this kind of character study of this guy. And, obviously to have a good movie, you have some things happen where, something throws him out of his rhythm. His coworker does something or asks him to do something. A family member shows up at one point that throws him out of the rhythm of his routine. Um, and you end up in this place in the movie where he you kind of put context to clues together about who he is, who he might have used to be. It never really gives you those answers, but you kind of have to piece things together, and um, you know, you end up in a place that's simultaneously happy and sad, you know, which is just so human and so real to how life kind of is, because you carry your past with you. You can't you can't go too much into the future, and you're kind of stuck in the present with the things you've been through the things that are sad and happy that you carry with you, the moments that make you feel terrible, but also the moments that bring you joy, and the small things that can do that for you in both directions. Um, and yeah, it's just such a human movie, with such a human character, that it doesn't really give you, like, a ton of answers, but just helps you connect with this guy that cleans toilets, but is so human, and a film that shows you just kind of, like, how life just is what it is. At one point, the character says to a family member, I don't want to give away too much of who this is and how it ends up playing out to spoil that. Not that it would be a huge spoiler, honestly, for this movie, but I like to spoil this list the least amount possible for these sort of discussions. But he says to her, um, "Now is now, next time is next time." And they kind of sing that together as they ride off. But that's just so that is what this movie is. Now is now, next time is next time, and you don't really know what next time is going to bring. You might have ideas, but now is now, and you carry with you the choices that you've made, and you have to live with those, and you have to build a routine, and you have to have a rhythm to your life, and you have to uh, you know live with the choices you've made, try to do the best with where you are, and yeah, that's kind of what this movie meant to me. I have it as a 5-star movie. I thought it was incredible. I laughed, I cried, and what more do you want out of a movie? And so this is kind of one that I don't know that'll be up everyone's alley, but I loved it. It is Perfect Days by Wim Wenders. I don't, if you don't know Wim Wenders, he's directed movies like Wings of Desire, Paris, Texas, or a couple of popular ones. But yeah, highly recommend this. It's streaming on Hulu, so you can see it there or rent it. That is my number one film of 2024 so far. And yeah, that is it. There's a bunch of movies I'm looking forward to seeing in 2024. There's some that I didn't get a chance to catch up with, wanted to, but didn't have time. And so, yeah, I really think it's been an interesting year so far. Not the best, but there have been some really good ones, as I just said. So go check those out. If you have any movies that you think I missed that you'd like to give a shout out to, you can leave a voicemail on the website by clicking the link in the episode description. That is establishingshotpod.com. You can also leave a email send me an email at establishingshotpod@gmail.com. I'd love to hear what your favorite films of 2024 so far are. And you can I'll probably put out some questions on the social media so you can reply to those too. I'd love to interact with you there. But that is all I have for this week. Like I said earlier in the show, next week we will be jumping back into our early Spielberg series covering his movies of the 70s and 80s. We're going to be doing a kind of like, it'll be a little bit different because it'll kind of be not his full movies because it's anthology movies that he directed just a part of and produced. But we're going to be covering mostly the Twilight Zone movie. But we'll also talk a little bit about his directing of a couple of Amazing Stories episodes. And so, yeah, that'll be a fun discussion next week. But until then, I've been Eli Price. You've been listening to The Establishing Shot. We will see you next time.
We were happy here. For a little while.
But look, I figure it this way. Better to be king for a night than schmuck for a lifetime.